Yeah, so last little video clip, Mom tried to review um, the research of Dr. Tongwen Wang between 1988 to 1995, and already starting to touch the subject called FKBP12, and also about the birth of little Noah. Noah the Ark, as we all know, in the Western, culture and the divine culture of West, the Bible certainly is the centerpiece, and the Bible has a lot of amazing stories, and the story certainly most broadly spread in the Bible actually is Noah's Ark story. Noah's Ark story. A lot of people know about what happened to Noah, and he was faithful to God. And when the human world, people start to corrupt. Basically, it describes the Western civilization in one period of time, already starting to come down to the very end, and it's facing the destruction. And human, morality corrupt, and the human heart is corrupt, and the people have totally lost the faith in God. Well, it's pretty much like the time we are now. So Noah's time is very similar to the time we are living now. That's another cycle, right? So in that cycle, Noah basically had demonstrated his strong faith to God, and God basically instructed Noah to build an ark. And Noah built the ark throughout the years, and clarifying the truth to those people, and he tried to spread the blessings and good news to those, and hoping to save them. However, ultimately, only he and the pairs of animals and creatures that served as a seed of the next round of human civilization, and his family member entered the ark, and the flood basically covered the earth, and the people all wiped out. And Noah's family and all the seed he brought along with him started another round of Western civilization. So that's the story of Noah. And in China, basically the big flood also was mentioned 5,000 years ago, and how this round of Chinese civilization started. The 5,000 years of Chinese culture also started from that. So anyway, Noah, the name is very symbolic, and Noah came into Dr. Tongwen Wang's life also at the time of the pretty much at the most critical moment, because the marriage relationship was about to end at that time because of the pollutions of the modern society has already started to break down the mind and the body and the spirit of both Dr. Tongwen Wang and her Jewish husband, Alan Genital Seal, Ji Tongming. So these two, people walked together with strong bond, and started to encounter obstacles of the spiritual and emotional world, and no longer could handle the stress that they were facing, and the conflict they were facing, and they were ready to split. And exactly at that moment, suddenly Dr. Tongwen Wang realized that she was pregnant. Okay, so that pregnancy suddenly changed the decision of both of them. Dr. Tongwen Wang and Mr. Alan Scott Genitosio suddenly calmed down, and everything started to move forward. So Noah truly came to the human world at this time with a mission. Now, Dr. Tongwen Wang came from a family, and her parents were devoted Chinese Communist Party members, and Mr. Allen Genitosio came from a Jewish family, and the mom actually, at the age of 18, already violated the Jewish law and ran away with a sailor, and went to Florida and gave birth to Allen. And 1 year old left the husband, carried the baby back to the hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts, and 2 years later had a second marriage with Mr. Peter Genitosio. And so Allen got adopted by Peter, and Peter got switched from his faith as a Catholic faith into a Jewish faith, and converted himself to a Jew. Okay, so this all happened. So Allen was raised as a Jewish boy, and grew up during the time when America was going down, and the tradition was being destroyed, and the leftist ideology started to take over the public school. And China had the so-called Great Cultural Revolution by the Chinese Communist Party to systematically deroot the 5,000 years of traditional Chinese culture. That was 1966, right? To 1976. So it's 10 years of so-called Great Cultural Revolution to systematically destroy the traditional Chinese culture and value. And in America, during the same period of time, America started to, go from the original traditional way of life and the traditional, divine culture-based education, and people's true faith, to righteous God, Jesus, and to eventually totally chase out the anything to do with Jesus, the public school, no prayer and everything, totally wiped out, and replace that with atheism, evolution theory, modern science and all that, and also free love stuff, right? So-called. And so Allen actually grew up in America and went through his early childhood during the American Cultural Revolution. And Dr. Tong Wen-Wang grew up in China, and throughout her childhood went through the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And so this, two people, young lady and a young man, both basically, encountered Cultural Revolution, brainwashing, and converted into, someone like Dr. Tong Wen-Wang was pretty much considered herself to be an atheist, right? And Mr. Allen Genitosio basically considered himself to be like a, free spirit, let go, tried everything in terms of drug and free love, and a leftist. So that was basically what Dr. Tong Wen-Wang and Mr. Allen, Scott Genitosio's state of mind. So the two people quickly fell in love and quickly, walk into a marriage, journey, although that was difficult. But anyway, it was not truly a marriage. Basically, was not driven by true faith and a true commitment. But the love, the bond was there, but was facing a lot of erosion and a challenge. And 1995 basically was a moment that either break or, restart again. So Noah's appearance in 1995 calls upon a new start of this relationship. So yes, in 1995, 25 years ago, the beginning of Noah's arrival, that was the human world situation. I think now looking back, revealing, what really was happening at the time overall, what the world is like in the 1995, what actually gathered upon, Dr. Tong Wen-Wang and Mr. Allen Scott Genitosio, pretty much I think it's almost like a metaphor, right? These two, the young man and the young lady, and the world's, information is pretty much all like holographically ingrained into both of them. And what was the state of the Western world and what was the state of the, Eastern world. And these two supposed to be, ingrained with the holographic messages of two sides of the world, the Western side and the Eastern side. So in that sense, Noah can, to bridge the Eastern and the Western representative at a very critical moment when these two were also corrupt to the degree of they could not hold together the world. So Noah truly has a great mission and a great role in this human world. And so that's the human world story. But in terms of the molecular world story, that was also very interesting. So at the molecular level, basically the molecular kings, right? They send their signals to the cells, and the cells will start to, follow those instructions and start to act. And so that whole process, the transformation growth factor beta, TGF beta, and they bind to their cell surface receptor, and then how the receptor start to release the signal and start to transmit the signal into the cell and to make a difference. And that actually involves the receptor on the cell surface to be first activated. Okay, now for the receptor to be activated, and that little guy, FKBP12, what does it do? Very, very fascinating. That little guy sits on the receptor, and before the transforming growth factor beta, the molecular king, can to send a signal. That little guy basically sits on the receptor, making sure the receptor doesn't send any signal, or maybe do something else. But basically, the very critical signal that's related to the molecular king's instruction, the FKBP12 little guy is there to safeguard and not to let the receptor randomly send any signal. Okay, and it waits for the king, molecular king, to come, and then that little guy comes off. Only when the little guy comes off, and then the receptor will be able to send further signal instruction further into the next very important messenger called a SMAD. Okay, so FKBP12 is called the molecular guardian, and that's what Dr. Tongwen Wang first identified that little guy, and then figured out its function. And that took Dr. Tongwen Wang all the efforts from 1993 all the way to 1996, right? And so, throughout those years, Dr. Tongwen Wang was incubating, and incubating something, and spiritually, and she was basically being totally absorbed and connected with this, little protein called FKBP12. And to such a degree that she was almost, with that little guy throughout the dreams. And here it comes, she brought this little guy's story to the whole world for the first time. And exactly during that time, she got pregnant and little Noah came into the world. So, what do you think? FKBP12 and little Noah. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Okay, let's pause here. So